So have you ever stopped to wonder, why would anybody plunge a perfectly good caterpillar cocoon into a pot of boiling hot water? I mean, seriously, who looks at an insect pupa and thinks, you know what, let's boil it? It's a fantastic question, and actually it's one that a 6th grade history assignment posed to students just to see what they'd come up with.
And, well, one kid actually wrote, "Hey man, I was hungry." But honestly, jokes aside, this seemingly bizarre and, let's be real, slightly gross idea of boiling the cocoon of a specific moth actually gave birth to one of the most luxurious materials in human history, and it sparked a massive 1,500-year-old global network. Welcome to This Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we are mapping out the legendary Silk Road. We're talking about a sprawling network of overland and maritime routes that literally connected the ancient world, linking China with the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. This isn't just a story about ancient fabric. This is about 4,000 miles that fundamentally altered the entire course of human civilization. Now, to help us easily digest over a millennium of complex global history, we're going to use the classic 5 W's. We'll cover 1. What was it? 2. Where did it go? 3. When did it thrive? 4. Who was involved? And 5. Why does it matter? All right, diving right into our first section. 1. What was the Silk Road, and what was traded? It all starts with sericulture. This is the highly sophisticated, incredibly precise process of cultivating mulberry leaves, feeding them to silkworms, and then carefully unspooling those boiled cocoons. And the stats on this are just mind-blowing. A single moth specimen could produce a microscopic thread just 0.025 millimeters thick, but it stretches literally 900 meters long. Ancient China guarded this process as their absolute most prized, lucrative secret. For a really long time, silk was only made in China, making it an incredibly rare, super expensive status symbol for empires all across the globe.
And the cultural reverence for this material was deep. You can really see it in this quote from the ancient Chinese philosopher Master Shun. He wrote, "Its achievement covers the world, for it has created ornament for a myriad generations." Silk wasn't just a fabric to them. It was a pillar of the economy, it functioned as a form of currency, and it was a literal symbol of civilization itself.
But the Silk Road definitely wasn't a one-way street. Just look at this incredible exchange. From the east flowed silk, ultra-strong porcelain, tea, paper, and eventually gunpowder. And in return, the west sent back powerful Central Asian horses, gorgeous glassware, wool, gold, and silver. Actually, the Romans bought so much silk it caused a massive drain of their silver to the east. But here's the really crucial detail. Almost no single merchant traveled the entire length of the route. Think of it like a giant relay race. Goods changed hands dozens, maybe hundreds of times, jumping from merchant to merchant. And with every single stop, they became more and more expensive.
Which brings us to our next section 2. Where did it go? Mapping the extreme geography.
So the key takeaway here is this massive number, 4,000. That's the number of miles the primary overland route stretched, going all the way from the Chinese capital of Chang'an straight to the Mediterranean Sea.
Now, I really want you to imagine the sensory details of crossing this terrain, because we are definitely not talking about a paved highway here. Traders had to navigate the scorching, completely unforgiving sands of the Taklamakan and Syrian deserts. They had to survive the freezing, oxygen-deprived mountain passes of the Hindu Kush. And they had to brave unpredictable waves on the maritime routes. You were constantly facing extreme weather, wild bandits, and the very real threat of starvation.
Because of those terrifying dangers, the entire route relied on a network of caravanserais. Basically, think of a caravanserai like an ancient, highly fortified highway rest stop. It was kind of like a hotel, a parking garage for your camels, and a restaurant, all rolled into one. Merchants would travel about a day's journey, and when night fell, they'd retreat behind these massive walled courtyards. It kept their animals, their incredibly valuable goods, and most importantly, their lives safe from bandits, while also giving them a chance to swap stories and vital intel with other traders.
Moving right along through history, we arrive at 3. When did it thrive? Eras of trade and travel.
So the Silk Road wasn't just a passing fad. It defined global trade for over a millennium. The routes were officially open and protected around 138 BCE by the Han Dynasty. But things truly hit a golden age during the Tang Dynasty, from 618 to 907 CE, which birthed these incredibly cosmopolitan cities filled with foreigners and bustling markets. And later on, the Mongol Empire created what's known as the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace. Under their absolute iron-fisted protection, the route became safer than it had literally ever been.
So, we talk a lot about empires and luxury goods,
But what about the actual people? Section 4. Who traded and traveled? The people of the road.
What's absolutely fascinating here is the sheer variety of people powering this whole network. While the merchants were out running that crazy desert relay race, women were the absolute backbone of the entire system. In China, women were the primary weavers. They tended the silkworms, regulated the temperatures, and spun the threads that literally fueled the empire's economy. Out on the roads, Muslim merchants were highly influential, spreading Islamic culture far and wide. And you also had Buddhist monks traveling right alongside those merchant caravans, setting up monasteries in oasis towns to share their faith.
And we can't talk about the Silk Road without mentioning Marco Polo. Traveling during that super secure Mongol period, this Venetian merchant's accounts of East Asia's insane wealth, their use of paper money, and these sprawling cities absolutely ignited European fascination. His journey is the perfect example of just how deeply the East and West were finally starting to connect.
Which brings us to our final and honestly most important piece of the puzzle. 5. Why does it matter? The lasting global legacy.
The physical goods were incredible, for sure, but the true legacy of the Silk Road? It's the spread of ideas. This network was basically an ancient information superhighway. Because of these routes, major world religions like Buddhism, Islam, and Nestorian Christianity found millions of new followers. Revolutionary technologies like papermaking and printing completely changed how humanity recorded knowledge. And gunpowder, which started as just fireworks in China, traveled west and completely, permanently transformed human warfare.
But we do have to look at the dark side of this connectivity. 75 to 200 million. That is the estimated death toll of the bubonic plague, the Black Death, in the 14th century. When you connect the world, everything travels, and that includes disease. Fleas carrying the plague bacteria hitched rides on the rats that lived in the merchants' grain shipments. So the exact same routes that brought wealth and amazing innovations also facilitated a pandemic that absolutely devastated populations across Eurasia. It's a really somber, unintended consequence of early globalization.
Yet, the geographical logic of the Silk Road is just so powerful that it is actually being revived today. China's modern Belt and Road Initiative is quite literally recreating these historic pathways. Except now they're replacing camel caravans with high-speed railways, modern highways, and deep-water ports to connect Asia, Europe, and Africa all over again. The ancient past is serving as the exact blueprint for our modern global infrastructure.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. The Silk Road proved that when diverse cultures connect, the ideas they trade end up changing the world forever. Looking at our hyper-connected digital world right now, what ideas, technologies, or beliefs are we trading today that will define the legacy of the next 1,000 years? Definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope this gave you a really engaging map of how the Silk Road truly built the modern world.